Can you remember the first model you ever built? If you can, you're a member of a generation that would go to a hobby shop and see box art like this, and you just had to buy these models, take them home and build them. Why are these memories so intense? We're going to explore that in Celebrating Aviation with Mike Mashat. But first, we'd like to remind you that we have a line of merchandise, various items for gift and office. And we're adding 4 brand new images: the Republic Rainbow, the Hughes Spruce Goose, the H-60 Blackhawk helicopter, and the little Republic CB amphibian. We invite you to check out this merchandise at the link in the title block below, and we appreciate the support. This allows us to bring you commercial-free programming here on YouTube, and we thank you so much for watching our videos. If you're familiar with the In Studio series, these are shot live in my art studio here in Los Angeles. And these are focused on factory models, the display models of proposals, airplanes that may or may not have been put into production. These generally were produced in the factory model shops of all the manufacturers around the country. We're going to be bringing something brand new to the channel. In Studio, at a look at plastic and vintage models from the golden age. Everything you need to know about collecting and building these great kits. Yeah, that's the cover of the Revell catalog from 1957-58. Inside were photos of models that, well, yours may not have looked as sharp as these when they were finished, but it gave you a good idea of what you were going to build. But wait, there's more. On the inside back cover of that catalog was a checklist for you to check off. And yes, this was my catalog, and those were the models I built. But you could be the first kid on your block to collect and build the whole set. And the way this would work is if you live near an airport, or if you piled into the family Studebaker and dad took you to the airport and you looked at something like this American DC-7 coming in for a landing, or if you were really lucky, you'd go on a trip with mom and dad in that airplane. And when you got home and you got off that airplane, guess what? You were headed for the hobby shop. You were going to buy a model of the plane you just saw or flew on, and you were going to build it. Here's an actual build-up from Revell. Maybe you were a TV fan, and on Tuesday nights you watched Whirlybirds, the story of Chuck and PT and Helen that ran the operation there at Longwood Field with their Bell 47s. There really wasn't a good Bell 47 plastic model in those days, so you'd buy the Sikorsky S-55. But 20 years later, G-Mark from Japan produced what is undoubtedly the best Bell 47, maybe even the best helicopter model ever made, 1/20th scale. From the tip of the rotor blade to the tip of the rotor tail guard was 25 inches. The detail on this thing was stunning. It was a skill level 12, but it looked so real you almost felt you could just crawl in, fire it up, and fly it right out of the bedroom window. On Saturday mornings, you had Sky King. There's Sky and Penny and the Songbird, a Cessna 310B. So, of course, you'd head down to the hobby shop and buy a Comet model of the 310 complete with tuna tanks. Why they call them tuna tanks? Well, here's the Air Force 310, the Blue Canoe. Oh, that's why they call it tuna. I love the lingo in aviation. Isn't it something? Maybe on a Saturday morning, you went to the movie theater and saw a Technicolor VistaVision movie called Strategic Air Command with Jimmy Stewart. He was flying the B-36 and the B-47 Stratojet. More power, Leo. And of course, you'd build a model. Here's Jimmy. Did you know that everyone in Stewart's family enjoyed building Revell exact scale bombers? Well, that's what it said in the promo. Stewart was a general in the Air Force Reserve. He'd flown bombers in World War II, and there was no one that could ever play a pilot as well in a movie as Jimmy Stewart. God bless him. Here's Revell's B-47. We're going to come back and look at this in a little more detail, but they had a whole line of models at that time that really represented the airplanes. Saturday night, right after Perry Como, it was Steve Canyon flying his F-102 Delta Dagger. So, of course, you had to go to the hobby shop and buy a model of the F-102, Steve's favorite jet. Or if you were really lucky, maybe it was your birthday or Christmas, Grandma or your favorite aunt would buy you the F-102 with 14 airstrip accessories. This was a 1/48 scale model, had all the missiles and ground equipment, just an incredible kit. In the In Studio series, we're going to be talking about the lingo of collecting. You've heard of the terms S-kit and pre-S and airmail box and things like that. And those refer to different types of models. But the S kits and the pre-S kits that you see here had a very unique look. The artist was Dick Cusciatti, that was Revell's first art director, and his style was very organic. It really was an exciting look to these airplanes. But in the 1956 era, the S kits made their appearance, and a whole new group of artists came on board, including the incomparable Jack Linwood. And here we see some of the airliners. It was the dawn of the space age. We had missiles and the X-15 rocket plane with some more Linwood covers. These were just magical experiences to buy and build these models. And again, if it was Christmas or your birthday, maybe you'd get a gift set. These had 3, 4, sometimes 5 different model airplanes in the same box. I still remember my first. It was the Strategic Bombers gift set that my Cub Scout troop bought for me on my 8th birthday. By the 1960s, the look was changing. The kids who were in elementary school who bought models in the 50s were now in junior and senior high school. And so we were getting into cars and sports and other interests. And so the look of the kits actually changed. We had Revell reissuing a number of 1950s S and pre-S kits, like the famous Artist and Famous Aircraft series that you see here. This is an out-of-the-box buildup of the Arctic P2V7. That's Pactra enamel spray can and just basically gluing it all together. Beautiful job. But these were just wonderful, wonderful model kits. And then there were the aircraft carriers. We're going to be doing a whole series on this. And these kits were just, $2 or $3. A lot of money in those days. You'd open a box as a kid and it looked like there were 4,000 parts in there. But I have to tell you, and I admit this freely, I saved up money and bought this model of the USS Ranger just to have the cover. It's by John Steele. And the Forrestal was the original kit. This is a reissue. The Forrestal had a blue deck for some reason, and this kit had the dark gray deck. And gosh, it just looked like the real thing. I couldn't believe it. Different model companies had different styles for their box art. Aurora had Mort Kunstler, who did the SNJ on top, and Joe Cthulhu, who did the F-105s, shown here taking off from Anywhere Air Force Base, USA. The Aurora kits were really unique. They had a sheen to their plastic. If you built Aurora kits, you knew some were better than others, but this little SNJ is a great example of a kit that just goes together well and it looks like the real airplane. Really a joy. Lindbergh had the kits illustrated by the king of the airbrush, Ray Gadke. And these planes looked like they were just exploding right out of the box at you. The Lindbergh kits were kind of beefy, as I say. It felt like the plastic was about 1/8 of an inch thick. They were larger than the Revell kits of the same airplanes, and they occupy a unique place in collecting. Here's a beautiful example of a Lindbergh kit, the Convair Pogo, which had actual operating contra-rotating propellers. Monogram had a look all unto their own, and they had a lot of operating features. They had bombs that dropped and landing gear that operated and controlled surfaces that moved. And so it was kind of a neat way to learn about airplanes building these models. And of course, that TWA Connie was just in a class by itself. A lot of model for 98 cents in those days. You had companies like Hawk and Comet that did unique airplanes that some of the other companies didn't do. The Hawk kit that you see there of the F-104 is what they call a thentaplated chrome finish. Beautiful to look at, kind of a bear to deal with because you had to scrape the chrome off of every surface that was going to be glued. But the end result was a beautiful model. It's also interesting to look at how two different companies approach the same problem of showing a missile being launched. Here we have Revell's Snark at the top and Monogram's Regulus II, both blasting off into the stratosphere. And we talk about Jack Linwood's European look. He did a series of aircraft and automobile kit covers in this wet, cloudy European sky type look. His 132nd scale World War II covers were just amazing. His favorites, as he said. The coloration, the action was just incredible. And of course, talk about marketing. You take the P-51 Mustang kit, reissue it as Bob Hoover's Old Yeller airshow performer. That's a pretty dramatic cover right there. And Jack's most popular cover, I say this with love, it's not my personal favorite, but it is by far the most popular cover he ever did. Everybody knows about his B-17 Memphis Belle. Jack's first cover for Revell was the C-130 at top, and you see a store window display that Revell would send to dealers as an incentive for us modelers to buy the kit. That's a later issue of the 130 in the Arctic Red. And here's that B-47 we saw before, but this is a unique model, and our in-studio series is going to explore some of these stories. This is a prototype for Revell's B-47, which originally was issued without any landing gear, as were all the Pre-S bombers. But this model had landing gear molded into it. It's a prototype. It came to us from a private collection, and we're going to tell some of those stories. Also, did you know that Revell was going to produce a 1/32nd scale Ryan X-13 Vertijet? These are photos of a test buildup. It was determined that the model would not go into production, and another company took it over. Who was it? We'll tell you in this series. The North American X-15 rocket plane, powered by a 50,000-pound thrust rocket engine, achieved altitudes as high as 354,000 feet, speeds of Mach 6.7. That's more than 4,000 miles per hour. This is the most successful research airplane ever flown. Revell had a kit, as you saw earlier, and so did Aurora. Jack Linwood did the cover. It looks amazingly like the real airplane, but what is going on with that buildup? And of course, the Aero Commander, seen here at Zahns Airport in Amityville, Long Island. Mort Kunstler was the artist, and this is a special model for me personally because I worked at that airport as a line boy. That Piper Cub is the first airplane I ever soloed, and that was kind of the launching pad to my career in aviation. So there you have it, a look at collecting models, vintage models, as we're going to cover in the in-studio series of Celebrating Aviation with Mike Machat. As always, special thanks to a wonderful group of folks. These are very, very special friends. I call us the Model Brotherhood. Glenn Weaver, Craig Cadera, Sean Day of Revell, John Plananak, Jim Keeshan, and Jim John. We all met each other in the model collecting universe, and these are some of my dearest friends, and I really appreciate all the great support over the years. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and until next time, take care.